All right, so are you ready to have your mind blown? Because today we are diving deep into the holographic universe.
Oh, I am so ready for this
I
one.
am too. This is a big one. So the holographic universe, what does that even mean? We're talking about the idea that our reality, everything we see and feel and touch and experience, could actually be a projection, kind of like a hologram.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept, right? That the world that feels so solid and real to us might actually be a kind of 3D image projected from a 2D surface, like a hologram?
Exactly. So I'm picturing those security stickers on credit cards,
Yeah, yeah.
that flat surface, but it's some holds all the information for a 3D image. So what if the whole universe is kind of like that, like a giant cosmic credit card holding the blueprint for everything?
That's the central question that Michael Talbot tackles in his book, The Holographic Universe. And he really takes us on a journey through physics, neuroscience, even paranormal phenomena, exploring how this holographic idea could completely revolutionize our understanding of, well, everything.
Okay, hold on. Paranormal phenomena. See, that's where it started to get a little lost. How does that even fit in?
Well, Talbot argues that things like telepathy, near-death experiences, even miracles, they might not be so strange or inexplicable if we start to view reality through this holographic lens.
Okay.
They could actually be glimpses into a deeper level of interconnectedness in the universe.
All right, so I'm definitely intrigued, but where do we even begin with a concept this big, this massive? Like, how do we even wrap our heads around the universe being a hologram?
Well, Talbot starts with something a little more familiar, the human brain. He goes into the work of Karl Pribram, a neuroscientist, who proposed that the brain itself might function holographically.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because I read that Pribram was researching memory, and he hit a wall. Like, he couldn't figure out how memories are stored because they seem to be both localized in certain areas of the brain, but also spread throughout the whole thing.
Exactly, yeah, that's the paradox that he was struggling with. It just didn't make sense with the traditional model of the brain where we think of specific memories being stored in specific neurons. And then a key turning point in his research were the experiments on rats.
Wait, so they remove parts of the rat's brains and they can still remember stuff? How is that even possible?
So they would teach the rats a specific task and then surgically remove portions of their brains, expecting the memory of that task to be gone, but it wasn't.
Oh,
The rats could still perform the task.
that is wild.
Yeah, so Pribram realized that the memory wasn't located in just one specific spot. It was as if the information was distributed throughout the entire brain, just like a hologram, which led him to propose that maybe our brains aren't storing memories like files in a cabinet, but more like interference patterns in a hologram.
Okay, I'm going to need a little help here. What exactly are interference patterns and how do they relate to holograms?
Sure. So a hologram isn't like a photograph. It's created by recording the interference patterns of light waves. So think about like the pattern that you get when waves overlap. And that's how they're able to store so much information in a 2D image.
Okay.
And if you damage part of a hologram, you don't lose the whole image. It just gets a little fuzzier
Right.
because the information is spread out.
Okay, so our memories are less like concrete things and more like potentialities, just kind of waiting to be activated.
That's a great way to think about it. And if our brains are working this way, holographically, it makes you wonder, what are we truly capable of? Are we only seeing a tiny fraction of reality?
Whoa, that is mind-blowing. You're saying there's this whole other layer of information out there that our brains just aren't equipped to process.
It's certainly a possibility, and this is just the beginning of the rabbit hole that Talbot takes us down.
Okay, I am ready to dive in, but before we go any further, I want to make sure our listener is with us. Does this idea of the brain working like a hologram
hmm
with memories as interference patterns, does it kind of make sense so far?
It does to me. And if you're already finding this intriguing, buckle up because we're about to go to a whole other level.
All right, I am so ready. So we've talked about our brains being like holograms, but what about the universe itself? That's where things get really cosmic,
Oh,
right?
yeah, things get really big really fast.
Okay, let's do it.
So we're about to explore the work of David Bohm, who was a physicist, and he took this concept of the hologram and he applied it to the entire universe.
Ah, Bohm, he's the one who came up with the idea of the implicate and explicate order, right? Like there's this like hidden reality underlying everything we see and
Yeah,
experience.
you got it.
Wow.
Exactly. So Bohm, he wasn't satisfied with just the traditional way of looking at the universe as just this collection of separate objects interacting randomly. He felt like there had to be a deeper, more fundamental level of reality that was connecting everything.
Okay, I'm with you so far. So how did he go from there to the idea that the universe is a hologram?
Well, Bohm was really influenced by quantum physics,
Right.
which was revealing all these strange connections and non-local effects, things like particles behaving as waves
Yeah.
and being in multiple places at once, seemingly communicating faster than the speed of light.
Yeah, quantum physics really does my head in. It's like the rules of reality just go out the window.
Right, exactly. And Bohm saw these quantum phenomena not as anomalies, but as clues, like they were pointing to a deeper reality.
Hmm.
So he believed that the universe was ultimately this flowing, undivided wholeness, which he called the implicate order.
Okay.
And this is where everything is interconnected, it's enfolded, and it's full of potential.
Okay, so that's like the hidden blueprint.
Yeah.
Right. And how does
Yeah.
that relate to like the world that we see and experience every day?
Right. So our everyday world, with all its seemingly separate objects and events, that's what Bohm called the explicate order.
Okay.
And he saw this explicate order as unfolding or emerging from that implicate order. Kind of like a 3D image being projected from a 2D hologram.
Okay, I get the concept.
Yeah.
But it's pretty abstract. Is there any way we can kind of picture it to like get a more concrete sense of what he's talking about?
Yeah, so Talbot actually uses this really helpful analogy.
Okay.
Imagine a drop of ink and it's being dissolved in a jar of glycerin.
Right.
Initially, you see the ink swirling around, it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
But as it dissolves further, it appears to vanish.
Right.
The ink's still there, but it's enfolded within the glycerin, and that's like the implicate order.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. And then if you stir the glycerin.
It's exactly. The ink patterns, they reemerge and they become visible again, and that's kind of like the extricate order unfolding. So Bohm's point is that our reality, what we experience as those separate objects and events, it's actually constantly emerging from this deeper interconnected realm.
Wow, so it's like the universe is constantly unfolding from this like hidden blueprint, and that blueprint, the implicate order, it contains the potential for everything, right?
Right, that's the idea, and this is where things start to get really mind-bending, because if the universe works like a hologram, then things that we consider paranormal, they might just be expressions of this deeper interconnectedness.
Okay, I'm going to need you to like break that down for me, because how does the holographic model explain something like, say, telepathy?
Okay, so think about it this way. If our minds are part of this huge holographic universe and that implicate order, that hidden blueprint, it contains all possibilities, then couldn't we, under certain circumstances, tap into information that exists outside of our normal linear perception of time and space?
So you're saying it's not about like transmitting thoughts through the ether. It's more about accessing this deeper level of reality where everything is already connected.
Yeah, exactly. Like 2 points on a hologram, they appear separate on the surface, but ultimately they're connected at a deeper level.
So things like telepathy or precognition, they're not so paranormal after all. Maybe they're just glimpses into this underlying interconnectedness of everything. Wow, that's a huge shift in perspective.
It is, it is. And it's important to remember that Bohm, he wasn't just, speculating. He was a serious physicist.
Right.
He was trying to create a model that actually explained what we were seeing in quantum physics.
So he was just trying to find a way to make sense of all the weirdness.
Yeah, exactly.
So does Talbot give us any specific examples, any actual evidence to support this holographic idea, something that our listeners can really connect with, those like aha moments?
Oh, he says he dives into a ton of fascinating cases.
Really?
But one that I always find really compelling is phantom limb syndrome.
Oh, yeah, phantom limb syndrome. That always kind of freaked me out. It's just so bizarre.
It is. It's like, how can people feel sensations in a limb that's no longer there?
Yeah, exactly. So how does the holographic model explain that?
So the traditional explanation is that it's all in the brain, right? Some kind of rewiring after the trauma of an amputation.
Right.
But the holographic model, it suggests that the body's blueprint, its information field, it's still present, even though the physical limb is gone. So the brain, working holographically, it could be accessing that information, creating that sensation of the limb.
So there's like a phantom limb blueprint within the larger holographic field?
Yeah, that's the idea.
That's pretty wild.
It is, and it gets even weirder when you look at other phenomena like those acupuncture microsystems that Talbot talks about.
Like the idea that the ear is like a map of the whole body.
Yeah, exactly. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I have, but I've never understood how, like, stimulating a specific point on your ear can affect a completely different part of your body. It seems like magic to me.
Well, the holographic model, it offers a possible explanation. Just as every part of a hologram contains information about the whole, Every part of the body could contain a holographic blueprint of the entire body.
Hmm.
So when you stimulate a specific point on the ear, you could actually be activating a corresponding point in the body's energy field.
Wow, so it's not just about nerves and physical connections. It's about this deeper level of information that's encoded in our bodies.
Exactly, exactly. And it suggests that our understanding of how the body works, well, it's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, my mind is officially blown, but before we get too lost in the weeds here, let's bring our listener back in. How's everyone doing out there? Are you still with us on this holographic journey?
We've covered a lot of ground, from the holographic brain to the implicate order, but this is just the beginning. Are you ready to take it even further and explore some of the even more mind-bending implications of this model? Because that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm ready. I think I think I can handle it. So we've talked about the brain being a hologram, the universe being a hologram. We talked about phantom limbs and acupuncture. But I have to admit, it's all still a bit fuzzy for me. What does this all actually mean for us? Like, what are the implications of all this?
That's the big question, right? Like, what does it mean to see the world, to see reality through this holographic lens? And that's what Talbot really tries to get at in the last part of the book.
So, if we're all just part of this giant cosmic hologram, what does that mean about us, about our lives, about, the choices we make?
Well, it suggests that maybe we have a much greater influence on reality than we tend to think.
Okay.
If everything's interconnected and our minds are part of that web, then we're not just these passive observers, we're
Uh,
active participants in shaping the reality that we experience.
Wait, are you saying that our thoughts, our beliefs, our intentions, they can actually, shape the hologram?
That's the idea. That's the really radical idea that Talbot puts forward. So remember Bohm's implicate order, that hidden blueprint.
Yeah.
It contains all possibilities, all potentialities.
Right.
And if our minds are a part of this holographic system, then our thoughts and beliefs, they could be acting like filters. They could be influencing which potentialities actually manifest in our experience.
Okay, hold on. Let me get this straight. Are you saying that if I believe in something strongly enough, if I focus my intention on it, it's more likely to happen? Is that what we're talking about here?
That's one way to look at it. And it's not about, magic or wishful
Yeah.
thinking. It's
Mhm.
about recognizing that we're not separate from this universe. We're
Yeah.
part of this dynamic, interconnected system. And our minds, well, they have the potential to interact with that system in ways that we're only just beginning to understand.
So it's not as simple as just positive thinking.
No, no, not at all.
Okay, so I mean that's a pretty huge claim. Does Talbot give us any evidence to back this up, this idea that our thoughts can influence reality?
Well, he talks about a lot of anecdotal evidence, stories from people who claim to have experienced this firsthand, like healers, meditators, people who have had spontaneous remissions from illnesses. But there's also, some scientific research that's starting to explore these connections, things like studies on the placebo effect, the power of belief in healing.
Okay, so maybe those mind over matter stories that we hear about, maybe they're not so far-fetched after all.
Exactly. The holographic model. It suggests that those boundaries between mind and matter, between the observer and the observed, they're way more fluid, way more permeable than we used to think.
Thinking about it this way, it's like we're each our own little laser, projecting our own unique interference pattern onto this universal hologram. And those patterns, our thoughts and beliefs, they're all interacting with each other, creating this reality that we all experience together.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. And it really makes you think, if we have this much influence, then what does that say about our responsibility? If our thoughts can shape reality, then don't we have a responsibility to choose those thoughts carefully?
I think you just blew everyone's minds out there with that one. It's a lot to take in.
It is.
So before we wrap up this deep dive, this incredible deep dive, is there one key takeaway you would like to leave our listeners with? Something to ponder as they go out and navigate this holographic world?
I think the most important thing is just to be aware, pay attention to your thoughts, your beliefs, your perceptions, recognize that you're not just a passive recipient of this reality, you're an active participant, you're a co-creator.
Mm.
And with that awareness, I think, comes tremendous possibility.
That's a really powerful thought to end on. And for our listeners who are now completely fascinated by this idea of the holographic universe, I definitely recommend checking out Michael Talbot's book. It's an amazing deep dive that might just change the way you see the world and yourself. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.